Hi. I am delighted that you're all here. I think healing is such a huge journey, and it takes a community to do that. And I'm just grateful you're all here listening. I appreciate you coming out today. So I just want to acknowledge that, taking a first step even to learn about healing. So my story really began when I was about 2. My father suffered an accidental overdose in Haight-Ashbury, and that motivated my parents to start over on an Illinois commune. So I was there till about age 11 when the leader was kicked out for the usual transgressions with women and alleged money issues. So my father built a wooden camper on the back of a '57 Chevy, and we moved back to normal society. Well, California. So The Fool in the Corn is really, this is my poetry collection. It's really a memoir and poems that comes out in December. And it tells that story about how my mistrust of leaders and others really helped me turn inward and start to journal and lean on nature and dreams and the imagination. So the sections in that book look at what I went through psychologically and emotionally to get through normal middle school, get through high school, marriage, graduate school, motherhood, and eventually poems about losing my own mother to cancer, where we picked up the conversation again about the commune and why we went. So in terms of my healing journey, leaving the commune really meant a loss of identity for me, and I had to find that inside before I could really connect outside of myself. So I had these trust issues in general, but writing was always a lifeline. And when I went to graduate school in Iowa City, I was in the cornfields again, and lo and behold, probably a trigger for me, my anxiety ramped way up. And at that point, I discovered the tarot, which is archetypal story cards, and I started journaling just privately by myself. And it helped me kind of calm down and soothe. It wasn't an outside authority. I could just listen to myself. But what I want to do is go back to that child self on the commune. She certainly just was simply a witness. She absorbed everything without judgment, didn't understand why we were there, why my parents were fighting, why there was this leader, but she held on to all these memories for me, so that as I grew over time, I was able to come back and connect with her through writing. But I really want to give respect to healing's timeline. It's not a race. It takes a lifetime. Everybody works at their own pace. So even though I had been writing for my whole life, it really wasn't until 20 years after graduate school that I published my first book, November Butterfly. And that really came out of the love. I was a young mom. I had older mom because I'm a late bloomer, but I had 3 young children, and I was busy in that dynamic loop of love and joy, but I also really needed to get away. So I applied to teach to fund my way to a writing retreat in the desert. So I was there with 100 other women writers, and I met my future publisher at that event. And by that point, I had kind of written long enough to understand the distance we were talking about between my work and myself, so that when people were critiquing my work, I wasn't having a panic attack about feeling like, oh my gosh, they're critiquing my story, but they're helping me make it stronger. And I certainly had to go to mental health professionals to deal with my struggles, professionals, and then I went to professionals in the writing field to make the craft stronger. So the first book, November Butterfly, came out. Whole bunch of anxiety, but I leaned on my therapist, and I also leaned on those women I had met in the desert. They were a great source of support. And then something magical happened. Nobody could have told me ahead of time. I was terrified of the book coming out, being seen, exposure. Well, with all their support, we did it. I woke up the next morning, I didn't die. And then there was room for this joy. I was connecting to people. I was coming out of isolation, and I didn't even know how isolated I was, right? And I'm speaking from having gone to school and been in graduate school, but some part of me was really hiding. So the first book came out, and then I think on the heels of all that joy, that child self was like, nice job, but there's a lot more in here. And then I also realized too, I can't just go dive back into some deep, dark territory. So I took some time out to do a joy project, which is my Heart's Compass Tarot. And that came about, I went back to that private journaling method using the cards, but I thought, you know what? I want to bring it into the classroom. Just like that joy from motherhood, there's this dynamic flow of love I experience with my students. So we wrote together, we did some artwork together, and my favorite symbol from that time was the heart as a compass, with the compass points. And through that coloring and writing, I realized I needed to forgive myself for all the misadventures and way I was judging myself, or why aren't you further along? How come you can't connect to people? And in fact, I was still so ungrounded that my compass had the points all misaligned. So one of my students saw it online and she was like, Tanya, you need to fix your compass points. So that book came out, and very quickly, this came out in 2021, I was ready to go back into the commune poems. And I'd been working on them for like 30 years, different titles, and it was really, at one point the title was Healing the Desire World, because I wanted to heal so badly. Another point it was called City in the Stars. But then I realized we didn't ever actually go up in the rocket ship and go to the city in the stars. There was a child in the cornfields. So we went back to the title of The Fool in the Corn. And the fool could, who was it? The leader, my parents, me, who knows? But I had a much gentler idea of what being foolish was, like brave for taking the risk. So I just want to close with reading the final stanza in the book, and this is where I go back and talk to that 8-year-old. So here goes. Back to the midnight acre of corn, I've come for you, remembering how you played piano in the basement without a lamp to practice for your first recital. If you can play alone in the dark by heart, you'll find your way in the light with 100 strangers staring at your back. And I think that's true for all of us. Like, if you can go back and find your memory keeper, I don't know if it's a child, a teenager, yourself from last week, find that memory keeper, and as all of us have been talking about, journal. It's enough to talk to that self. When you're ready, share it with one person you trust. And then the rest unfolds as you go. You can sign up for a class, and maybe that first class is really a group of peers where you're just reading your work aloud and nobody's saying anything. You might just need the support for, here's what I wrote this week. And I think San Diego Writers Inc. has some classes like that, brown bag lunch. You just write and you read. And it feels very strange at first. You're like, nobody said anything back to me. But you get to hear your words, and nothing's coming in at you, just your words. So I would recommend that. And then, again, the rest will unfold. But maybe there is a therapist you want to connect with if you're writing about challenging stuff. Maybe there's a form of spirituality you want to reconnect to or re-engage with. Give yourself that support team, because it takes support. So I just want to close with that. I hope you take the plunge, connect on the page, share it, come out of isolation, because there's joy that is our birthright that we're meant to feel. Close there.